don't think that we can have debate on two motions simultaneously. I think we are supposed to be having a debate on the secondary motion, and once that is debated and resolved, then we would be debating the primary motion.
Okay, and in there it should say both items are debatable.
Yeah, it does not
quote it just about verbatim.
It must be the secondary motion must be acted upon or disposed of before direct consideration of the main motion can be continued.
And it's basically in trying to debate either agenda item, they overlap and they're sort of one and the same in one sense, because they both go off on cure and correct. They both have just a different slant on them, one to cure and correct and one to deny the cure and correct. So we can, in the process of discussing the substitute motion, we are going to overlap them anyway. So it's not going to be a huge issue, because in the discussion about denying the cure and correct, you're also going to be getting into a discussion of what that might mean. So it's either way is fine, but you can actually debate, and I would maintain this, both motions, because we haven't accepted one as a substitute motion. That's what's strange about the substitute motion process, is you have two motions there because you haven't settled yet on which one is going to be the main motion.
Following your procedure, I believe that debate on my amendment to my motion is in order.
And we can absolutely begin discussion now. I'm happy to do that, to move us along.
So we are, at this particular point in time, we are not discussing the adoption of we're not discussing the consideration of the substitute motion. We're considering my amendment to the substitute motion. Therefore, we can only debate whether or not to add my amendment, in my view. Okay. I believe that it's important to include the statement, I'm sorry, in the beginning of the parens, the first part, that the Board of Education, because when you look at the beginning sentence, it will flow correctly then. I believe it's important for us to advise the public that the board determines that there was no Brown Act violation, and that the event is time barred in regard to the making of the fine council members' contracts. And by adding this to my motion, it makes it clear to the public what our determination was, and it will help write the letters of denial should you accept my substitute motion for that we submit to the makers of the complaints. So if I could read my entire motion, if that would be in order.
You certainly may, Ms. Mayo.
I move that the Board of Education find that no Brown Act violation occurred and is time barred in regard to the making of the 5 council member contracts on April 23rd, 2012. So that's number 1. Number 2, write letters to Citizens Slack and Minion. And then number 3, that the board participate in trainings with all of the text that you have.
Okay, and this is discussion at this point. And obviously, I wouldn't accept this at all, this language at all. And I do have some serious issues in here with some of the sub-statements that go on. I don't believe that, and I never have and never will, and it's a legal opinion that is debatable around this, that I do not believe that cure and correct has to at all ever get into, and I said this on Monday night, guilt and punishment. This is not about the finding of guilt. It's a question of whether we can do it better, and that is a wholly separate issue. I also am absolutely in opposition to the idea that you would choose to write letters of thank you to 2 citizens thanking them for their steadfast commitment to the Brown Act, because I actually think it's quite condescending to those two citizens to kind of give them a pat on the head that we're going to write you a thank you letter and that will make it all better. The Cure and Correct Act actually requires that the board take some action here on whether to cure and correct or not to cure and correct, to accept it or deny it. And in the process of that, it's a requirement that you notify the citizens, not with a thank you letter, but with a letter informing them of the board's action. And so I think to put that kind of statement into what I think are serious public concerns, and actually, first of all, deny what they believe is a kind of an affront to the public and a skipping of steps in terms of having any sort of board discussion and public review of contracts, and then to say we're just going to thank you for your letters, is actually kind of an insult to me, to the community, because it's required that we inform them of what the board's action is. So I take great offense at that. And I also believe that we are focusing too much here on guilt and innocence, and that to me is not the issue. The issue fundamentally, and why the motion I might make was so simple, is it's fundamentally about, can we do things better, more transparently, more honestly, and there's no harm and no foul in doing that. But I do not want to see this board turn around and then kind of be condescending toward a couple of community members. I find it very offensive and could not in any way, shape, or form participate in something like that. I think we're going to actually, might as well slap them in the face.
Well, and my concern with this motion is that it doesn't allow anything for the public being able to see the contracts that were agreed upon and eventually signed. And I do think that the public deserves to be able to at least see them and give input, even though they may stand however they are, whatever decision we come up with on that, but it doesn't allow anything to bring them out in open session.
Would this, if this were accepted, then it wouldn't preclude us from making another motion that would bring the contracts to the table and they would be shown to the public. It doesn't do it here, but it doesn't mean that that action couldn't follow this. It just means it's not a part of it. And I hesitate to try to make it a part of it because it's so terribly confusing now. I mean, that seems like it'd be nice. Let's just make it part of it so one, smooth action, but it's not so confusing with Robert's Rules of Order that I think I would just prefer to look at this one knowing that that option is available to me, and I would certainly want to take it.
Yeah, well, this board in the past, I can remember moments sitting on this board and being stunned at the idea that I remember one of our board members making a motion, well, the district will understand the will of the board. I mean, we were voting on a contract that had blanks in it, and one of the board members made a motion that, well, the district will understand the will of the board. You can't really run a business like that. It's a very precise business, and, that's what I believe is being questioned here, is how precise are we going to be? And I would absolutely concur that the placing of these contracts, but then I'm placing the contracts as an attempt to cure and correct, because in the process we eliminate any sort of potential litigation from the two citizens, and we also tell the public that we have nothing to hide here, we can do it better. Not we did it wrong, but we can do it better. And that notion, excuse me, Mrs. Mayo. Mrs. Mayo, you're out of order there. Point of order. Point.
You, by bringing in, discussing your motion relative to this particular amendment, that is not in order at this time. We're only discussing my amendment.
And point not well taken, because all of these issues revolve around a single thing. If we're discussing a motion does not have with it the posting of contracts, then what we're suggesting is there's an absent part to it. So what we're talking about is the posting of contracts.
Right now, my motion indicates that we find no Brown Act violation occurred, and that and it's time barred in regard to the making of 5 council member contracts. You can speak, in my opinion, you can speak that you, regarding your view